It's the carbon ratio is the problem. All we need to worry about is the ratio. We want to know what is the ratio. Since carbon's coming out of the atmosphere, we need to put the same amount of carbon back in the atmosphere. Hello, this is episode 1. As I explained, there's 6 of them, 6 or more of them anyway. This is the first one. It explains how and why the entire world is looking at climate change from the wrong perspective. How this happened is beyond me, but I'll explain how I finally opened my eyes. But first, I have 2 problems. Explaining the obvious is more difficult than the obscure. And what I do is I use the same science, the same terminology, the same measurements, everything that the scientists have already determined. I use the same ones, but I look at them from a different perspective, which gives an entirely different outcome. So it's difficult for you to see the difference without paying attention. The second problem I have is that explaining climate change is not ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. The problem in explaining climate change is that everybody already thinks they understand it. They have a very good idea of what is happening to the planet. And I don't blame them for that. I was exactly the same way. I listened to what the scientists said. I believed them. I thought they do. They know what they're talking about, but they're looking at it differently. They're looking at it scientifically. I'm looking at it from a more practical point of view. So I ask you to do the same thing and see if you can follow the reasoning. Lastly, if I go too slow or this seems too remedial or tedious for your taste, you can always go to the nonprofit's website. That's Earth, what is it down there? earth-ship.com or .org. We're a nonprofit, right? Anyway, when you get to that site, you go to the one page that says the hard truth. That page will explain to you, just one page, it'll explain to you everything I'm going to explain to you in this PowerPoint, but there won't be any pictures. That'll give you a pretty good idea. And if you want to share it, you can copy that page and send it to people that you know and let them worry about it. And I also mentioned to you in the beginning that there was something we could do about it. Well, we can't change science. We can't change the climate. There's already enough carbon in the atmosphere to ensure our species extinction. And I will explain to you. I put a number on it, and you'll see how I determined that. So if that's the case, then what are we going to do? Well, one of the things we could do is we could change our government to get good leadership. And if you think that's impossible, I used to think that too. But you go to the Fix Your Congress website, which is the other one, and that will explain to you how we can repair the main branch of government, which is our representatives in Congress. We can change it without touching the Constitution and without asking Congress for their help and participation. Congress hides behind the Constitution. They use that as an excuse. Well, good, let them use it. We're going to go around them. But we got to do it. We all have to sign the petition to make a difference. So now you know there's something you can do. All right, this is the common sense law of climate change. Now I ask you, I'm going to read it to you. And when I'm done reading you, I want you to know that climate change is no more different than that. If any portion of the carbon that photosynthesis has removed from the atmosphere and stored in the earth as fossil fuels, thus allowing the earth to cool, is put back in the atmosphere, then the earth's temperature must once again increase to the same temperature it was before the carbon was removed. Duh! I mean, it's climate change is like baking a cake. If the recipe calls for a cup of sugar and you decide to add 2 cups of sugar, your cake is going to be sweeter than what the recipe said. And if you did it in reverse and you only put in half a cup, then it's not going to be as sweet. Carbon is the only thing that matters. That's it. Scientists have determined if there was no carbon in the atmosphere, the earth would freeze over. It would freeze over from pole to pole. And there would be no life on Earth. But there's always been enough carbon in the atmosphere to keep the Earth from freezing over rock solid. Then, when we had too much carbon in the Earth back 50 million years ago, before the Earth began to cool, the Earth was too hot. Humans could not have survived 50 million years ago because we cool ourselves through our skin, and we wouldn't have been able to do that. So now that the Earth is cooled off, it got to a perfect temperature for us. It was blue and green and livable, and everything was working perfectly. Now what we've done is we've added another extra cup of sugar to the cake. We have made the cake too sweet to eat, and we've made the Earth too hot for us to survive. It's really no more difficult than that. So here's how the mistake happened. It's nobody's fault. I'm not blaming anybody. But here's how it happened. In August of 1988, a scientist from NASA, who was the head of NASA, Dr. James Hansen, he had a lot of data. It's NASA, so he had data from all over the world. And he was very skilled, very intelligent, and he was able to tease out of all that data a trend line. And he began to notice that the trend line was changing. It was increasing. This wasn't some short-term aberration or seasonal fluctuation. The Earth was actually getting hotter. And he knew, he was well aware, that that was a very serious problem. So he went before Congress and he explained the problem. That's him over there on the right-hand side. You see those squiggly lines? Well, that's because the only way he could explain the problem to Congress was as a scientist, because that's the only way he thought. It was as a scientist he discovered the problem. So when he explained the problem, he explained it as a scientist. And he talked about things, and I wasn't there, I didn't read his speech, but he talked about things like the long-term fluctuation in the severity and frequency of extreme weather events. Well, that's how you notice there's something wrong, right? You take the data points he's looking at, those are weather events. And so when he explained to Congress we had a problem, he explained it in terms of weather events, and it was complicated. So Congress understood very little of that presentation, I suspect, but I know they did very little about it. They did nothing. So Jim Hansen left Congress, went out into the world, told the rest of the world the same thing he told Congress, taught at Columbia, told the students at Columbia the same thing he told Congress. That's all well and good, and I bought it along with everybody else. I was really concerned, but in my gut, I knew I could not make climate change sound as severe as I knew it really was, as long as I talked about the weather. But nevertheless, I went on. I was a guest lecturer at universities. I was the keynote speaker at the Organization of Non-Aligned Nations in Havana, Georgia. I spoke about sustainability on merchant ships. And still, something was bugging me, and then it hit me. Then it hit me what we got wrong. It's the carbon ratio is the problem. All we need to worry about is the ratio. We want to know, what is the ratio? Since carbon's coming out of the atmosphere, we need to put the same amount of carbon back in the atmosphere. That's when the ratio would be 1. What's coming out is being put back. We would be fine. Well, I'm going to go on in episode 2 and tell you a little bit more about that. This is the end of episode 1. This explains how we got headed in the wrong direction in August of 1988. Episode 2, I'll explain exactly why climate change is vastly worse than the public is currently as the public is currently being led to believe. Now there's these websites down at the bottom of the page again. I'll move this out of the way. So if you want to go to them, you can copy them down. I keep putting them on the screen from time to time because you might get bored of me talking. That's understandable. And then you might want to go on and just read it yourself.